G'day, I'm Paul. This is the new Volvo EX90. It is the fully electric successor to the XC90. We're at the Cars International launch. We're going to be doing a quick drive of this today. I'm going to run you through the outside, the inside. We're going to go for a quick spin as well to see exactly what it's like before we do get it back in Australia. If you do want to skip ahead to other parts of this review, you can use the time codes that are up on the screen, or if you're on YouTube, you can scroll down and use the chapters below. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe to our channel, press the bell icon. But let's kick off with the exterior. They don't have a video crew here, so I'm going to be shooting this all myself just for something a bit different. So XC90 and EX90 are similar in the sense that they sit on the same wheelbase. This is a bigger vehicle though, so it is longer, it's taller, it's sort of appreciably bigger, and you've also got more storage space as well with the frunk under the bonnet there and decent sized boot as well. So on the design front, you can see those Thor's hammer headlights have gone to town on the LED game, indicators built into that bottom section there. And like a lot of electric vehicles these days, that whole front end is sealed off outside of the bottom, and that has these active louvers that open and close depending on the cooling requirements of the vehicle. Coefficient of drag is 0.29, so not amazing, but not too bad for an SUV sized vehicle. You've got to remember that the smaller vehicles with the better coefficient of drag don't have as much of a sort of big block there to move through the air. So that's where this sort of ends up chewing through a bit more energy. Up the top there, look at that, you've got a LiDAR. So this is something that Volvo has been experimenting with for a while now, and you'll see here standard on the EX90. Whether or not the full functionality works in Australia when it arrives, we don't know just yet, but it is a full feature suite there that they can update with over-the-air updates over time to get more functionality out of them. See another sensor there, and also a camera off to the side as well. Door handles retract when the car locks, and in addition to that, you also now have the ability to lock and unlock the car using a phone. So you just keep your phone in the pocket, or you can use NFC, a sort of more traditional way of doing things. I'll show you around the back here as well. More LED lights. The design's actually quite nice. It sort of looks similar enough to the XC90, but looks more modern than the XC90 in terms of its proportions and just some of those design highlights. So it's quite a good looking vehicle. So internationally, this is available as a 4, 5, I think 6 and 7 seat as well. We'll only be getting 7 seats for the Australian market in 2 different variations. In terms of pricing for the Australian market, we don't know the exact pricing just yet, but we think it's going to be around that $130,000 mark. So full LED lights up the top there, and then around the side there as well. Now in terms of the battery, so 111 kilowatt hour battery across the range. You have both AC and DC charging. So AC charging, 3-phase, 16 amps, and then it will do up to 250 kilowatts DC charging. Of course, we're gonna have to test all of this out to see what the average charge rates are, but 111 kilowatt hour battery means a fairly reasonable driving range. They're talking about 570 kilometers minimum on the WLTP cycle, up to 614 on the combined cycle, which is pretty impressive in my opinion. And then you're gonna have a mix of wheels for this to run with. This one that we're looking at now is currently sitting on 22-inch alloy wheels. Quite a cool design with that sort of aero element, and the sections there that sort of help this cut through the air in terms of aerodynamics. So it's quite a sort of decent looking car there on the outside with a full glass roof as well. Let me know what you reckon in the comments section below on the design. Do you think it looks good? Sort of think it looks nice out on the road. Maybe not in this beige color, but looks nice either way. Righto, so this is what the interior looks like. And look, Volvo has gone to a lot of effort to not only minimize this interior in terms of the buttons, and I mean, there are literally no buttons here. It's all just on the screen and on the steering wheel, but they've gone for a really premium look as well. So high-end finishes on the dash there. You've got that sort of textured material, wood grain through the center with that large infotainment screen. Really does feel quite nice and premium. And if you have a look at the pricing here, around that sort of $130,000 mark, depending on the spec they land on in Australia, it actually feels like pretty good value for money when you look at where they've gone with stuff like GLE in Australia. The price of that car is so expensive that it makes this feel like bargain basement when you look at what you're getting inside the cabin. So how does it all work? So they've basically linked this phone as a car key, or alternatively, if you don't want to use your phone, you can just use a sort of card that you place down here. I've always found these a little bit strange because to start the car, you've got to take your key, place it here, but it means then you can't use your phone to charge. because you'll sort of just melt the card. So a bit of a weird one, but obviously you can just use your phone to get around that like you can with a Tesla. You approach, door handles open, and then in you get. There's also cooling vents down here as well. So if you are charging your phone, it is going to make sure it doesn't overheat the phone, because that's one of the biggest issues with wireless chargers when you have stuff like Android Auto and Apple CarPlay running. It ends up sort of just heating the phone up so much that it ends up no longer working. So that is a cool feature. They've got a screen here ahead of the driver as well, along with driver monitoring functions. So in addition to that LiDAR system, this basically makes sure that you're keeping your eyes on the road. Later on, we're going to test this semi-autonomous stuff to see how well it works. We only really have a short time with the car, so I can't sort of go into a huge amount of detail, but that is something that we'll go through. Have a look at this central system here. So they've gone down the path of using Android Automotive OS, similar to what Porsche has done with new Macan. And that means that they're able to use that as the base layer and build everything on top of it. Doesn't mean that they can't use Apple CarPlay because it is Android Automotive OS, but it does mean that they have a lot more control over this system, and it's part of the reason this car has been delayed for its introduction. Volvo has virtually designed the entire software stack themselves, and it means that they've come across a lot of challenges that come along with doing that yourself. But I think that here in this system, the sort of brief play that I've had with it, they've actually done a great job with it. Central to that is the Google Maps setup. You've also got a bunch of other shortcuts you have down the bottom here to access critical functions. And most of it seems fairly intuitive and easy to use while you're on the move, which is one of the biggest issues with these sort of buttonless infotainment systems. It's impossible to do stuff while you're driving. This actually kind of just seems to solve all of those problems and is pretty straightforward. They also have voice recognition through Google as well, so it's able to use the cloud to analyze your voice and get a better understanding of what you're trying to say. So looking forward to having a proper play with this when we do get the car to Australia. The quality of this reverse view camera doesn't look amazing, so if you have a look at the different sort of views that you've got there, you can't really, like, it just seems super grainy. So I would have thought with a brand new car in today's day and age, they would have had a much better job there with the quality of that camera. You'll notice no gear stick. That's all now done here on the steering wheel. That's not only your gear selector, but also where you switch cruise control on and off. And the steering wheel sort of sits nicely in the hands as well. Gone down the path of doing what Volkswagen does with some of their electric cars, where you have a single set of switches for the front and the rear. You've got to toggle between the two. Not the most intuitive thing in the world, but I guess it's there anyway. On the storage front, you've got cup holders up the top here. Glove box here that looks, center console that looks pretty decent, but there's sort of not a huge amount of storage in there. But you do get storage down the bottom here with USB-C connectivity as well. And the seats are very comfy too with massage function. We don't know exactly what specs we're going to be getting in Australia, but if this is the type of thing we're expecting, this is going to be a pretty premium proposition. In terms of legroom in the second row, got plenty of space back there, so lots of knee room, headroom. This sits on the same wheelbase as the XC90, and one of the things they've resisted doing is going down the path of supersizing the wheelbase because it affects handling and performance. This, on the other hand, actually feels quite nice and comfortable there with the ability, like I said before, to split the seating configuration that you're able to get with the car. The second row slides as well, which is good news. Third row, adults. Will you fit in there? Kind of not really, and depends what size of adult you are, but I found it pretty cramped. It's not exactly the best space for adults, but you know, it is one of those compromises you make. This is probably more an occasional 7-seater for adults rather than something you're going to use full time. And in terms of cargo space, your third row folds down electrically. And if I'm reading these figures right, the largest volume available is 2,107 litres, which is pretty impressive. And then it drops down to around 380 litres with that third row up. So still plenty of storage space behind the third row. Underfloor storage is really good as well. So they have really thought about everything there. So that is a look at the interior. Let's hit the road, see what this drives like, and hopefully it drives sort of as well as it looks. So there's a bit of a weird interruption to the video, just some stuff that I learnt after we drove the car. So on the rear axle here, you've actually got like a dual clutch setup. So this allows the vehicle to effectively have a limited slip differential. So when it is in that performance all-wheel drive mode, you're getting the effectively a torque vectoring effect on the rear axle. It's an NMC battery chemistry. And you can see a closer look there at the suspension chambers as well. Did have a couple of random software bugs with the car after we were filming. So basically a couple of times it just started braking on its own, even though there was nothing there. So they were two isolated incidents. And then in addition to that as well, we had issues with locking and unlocking using the new key that they've got set up. But they're all sort of software issues that hopefully they'll be able to sort out, and it won't be an issue long term. But yeah, so I'll give you a look at this. So this is the SPA2 architecture that this sits on. And while the car's been delayed, this has been developed for quite some time. So yeah, and back to the video. Okay, so we're just about to hit the road. This is all going to be a little disjointed. I mentioned earlier that I don't have a film crew here, so I've been left to my own devices, and I don't have Igor or Sean here to protect me. So we're just going to try to do this on our own. Yeah, reverse camera, not very good quality. It's just, I don't know, like there's vision of stuff, but the quality isn't great. So it means that you're constantly having to look yourself to see exactly where you're going. So I think they could have definitely improved that. Given the car is brand new, gives you a chance to put the highest resolution cameras and to make it look really good. I just think they've missed a trick with this. But anyway, so for the Australian market, we're going to be getting 2 specs of this. Both are 7 seats. Your entry level is going to have like a wool blend seat, and then the top spec is going to have this nicer material. Given Polestar's gone sort of no leather unless you pay mega dollars, I suspect they're going to do the same here. I don't know exactly what this material is, but the seats are super comfy. We've been driving around a fair bit today, and they sort of hug you in really nicely and give you that support that you need. Massage function works well as well, so it's sort of like a win-win on all those fronts. There's going to be 2 versions of this car in terms of power outputs as well. We're in the top spec version, so it's an ultra spec, and the performance version. So it means that this is getting almost 400 kilowatts of power. The numbers here out of new electric cars are just crazy, and over 900 Newton meters of torque. Now, sounds like a lot, and it is a lot, but you've got to keep in mind that the vehicle itself actually weighs almost 3 tons. It's just under 3 tons once you've added your passengers in. So there's a lot of weight to be sort of hauling around the place, and that's not lost on you when you're driving it. It does feel fast. Like if I pin the throttle now, it sort of pushes you back in the seat nicely. It's got single pedal driving and all that sort of stuff. There is actually a performance mode here as well. If you punch that, it's sort of far more responsive, and that's accessed using this touch screen here. It's always available there, and you can switch your single pedal driving on and off really quickly as well. So they're all very welcome features. Now, what does that mean in terms of your performance specs? So 0 to 100 in just under 5 seconds for this Go Fast version. The entry level is going to be closer to that 6-second mark. So both pretty sort of fast there in terms of those acceleration numbers. The one thing that is worth keeping in mind, and probably doesn't apply to Australia, but if you are buying this car in Germany or something, Volvos are all speed limited now to 180 k's an hour, so you're not really going to be able to do any speeds much faster than that, which is fine. I mean, it's a family car, it's not the end of the world, but just something worth keeping in mind anyway. Now let's talk about the ride. So air suspension is going to be available on the vehicle. Whether or not it's standard, we don't know yet, but it is here in the vehicle that we're driving now, and they've done such a good job with a heavy vehicle like this and making it feel comfortable. We're sitting on 22s here in this car, and it feels like it's just soaking up everything really nicely. You have adaptive damping there as well, so it means that you can transition between different ride qualities, but ultimately this is doing a good job. The caveat to that is that the drive that they have us on here is all very smooth roads, like some of the smoothest roads I've ever encountered here. So it may change when we do get it back to Australia. Traditionally with Volvos, if you haven't gone down the path of air suspension, you have a very firm ride. So here I think that they've probably got that mix right, given that this is going to be sold here in the American market. They're going to be selling a lot of these here. I suspect it is built here as well for the American market. They really just wanted to focus on making sure that this rides properly. The Australian versions of these cars will come from China, which is where I think they're going to get those economies when it comes to cost. My understanding is that in the UK, this is like a £90,000 vehicle. So given the pricing they're aiming for at around that 130 grand, it should mean that it is much cheaper, I guess, to manufacture out of China than it is to put together here in the States. The other thing that I'm really impressed by is how quiet it is inside the cabin. Yes, I know it's an electric vehicle, but it is dead silent in here, and I think they've done a really good job there in terms of the insulation and making sure that this is a super quiet place to be seated, even when you are driving on the highway and doing all that stuff. They've put a lot of effort into the sound system here, Bowers & Wilkins, over 20 speakers inside the cabin. Each speaker has its own channel, so it is like a proper high-end sound system that they've spent a lot of time on developing for this car. And traditionally, Volvos have had really good sound systems, so this is sort of no exception to that rule. I'll point out as well now that we tested out the sort of Pilot features that use the LiDAR system and other sensors around the car to allow it to drive semi-autonomously. They work pretty well on the highway. So on the highway, it's able to steer nicely. It's able to guide you within the lanes. You're able to use the indicator to change lanes as well. In and around the suburbs and stuff, it didn't seem as confident, but ultimately it's a system that you shouldn't be using in and around the burbs anyway. It's just something that you want to be using on a highway. Now, that has been your first look here at the new Volvo EX90. It'll be arriving in Australia next year. Pricing, still, we don't know, but we think it'll be around that $130,000 mark. So far, I'm really impressed with this. If you do want to go down the path of a family electric vehicle, you've got options like the Kia EV9 that are 7 seats, but this really steps it up a notch in terms of luxury. Feels great here inside the cabin. It is very high-end and premium. So let's see what it's like once we do get it back in Australia, but this first impression has been pretty good. I'm keen to see how it all sort of plays out from here. If you did enjoy this video, please make sure you like it, you share it with your mates, and if you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel as well. But until next time, take it easy.